Mr. M. Gopi Shankar, Vice President and Chief Engineer, Advanced Vehicle Program, Ashok Leyland. Can you put our hands together for Mr. Gopi Shankar? Also, I'm inviting on stage Mr. Anirudh Kulkarni, Vice President and Head, CV Engineering Research Center, CV EV Fuel Cell, Tata Motors. A big round of applause for Mr. Anirudh. Also, I would request Mr. V. Ramanathan, Head OE Business, ZF Commercial Vehicle Control Systems India Limited. A big round of applause for Mr. V. Ramanathan. Now I would be inviting the moderator for the session, Mr. Ashim Sharma, Partner and Group Head Business Performance Improvement Consulting, Nomura Research Institute. A big round of applause for Mr. Ashim. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and very good afternoon to everyone here. I think the topic that we have today, ADAS technology, telematics and connectivity, that's been talk of the town for several years now. There have been solutions in the country. There has been some amount of adoption across these. And today I think we have the who's who of the commercial vehicle industry here, the technology providers, the auto component suppliers, to talk about what is it that has happened, what is it that must happen to increase adoption. Are there any challenges? Are there any roadblocks? Or where do we see more and more adoption happen as we move forward into the future? So with that, I think to begin the discussion, let's first of all start with getting the OEM perspective on what sort of results have been seen so far by customers who have adopted telematics solutions or some of the ADAS solutions, and is there sort of a stickiness coming in terms of those customers once they start experimenting with the technologies to begin with and then see the benefits, and then that probably starts off a relationship in the form of adopting more and more of these technologies in their fleets. To start off and kickstart the discussion on that, I would request Mr. Kulkarni to share his perspective on Tata Motors and what's been the experience so far.
Okay, thank you for selecting me as the opening batsman. Okay, and so good morning everybody. Since you mentioned about the OEM perspective and everything, before that, I just mentioned that the topic is not new. Right? The ADAS, the telematics, the connectivity part is not a new thing, but how we are seeing it in today's context. Today's context of say changing world of say EV where CO2 reduction, looking at the say safety perspective, and then lastly I think somebody was mentioning about the data part. We are seeing from that perspective. So when as an OEM when we see, the answer is that yes, all these technologies we have to really work upon. We have to promote. We have to promote not only from a framework of say regulation, but also from seeing from customer angle. And that's why when we see about this ADAS now, with say many segments or sub-segments within India, and those commercial vehicle side, the solution should be slightly different. And that is what I think the research work which is happening in India, globally and everything. The global solution may not be immediately applicable for India, but I think we are working on this. As far as the telematics is concerned, the telematics is being used not only for the data generation, but now it is also seen as a safety feature going forward. And there I think various personas which are there into this telematics side or connectivity side, which is taken care by the various OEMs and everything. And the last part which you mentioned about the connectivity. And the connectivity, the work which is happening say, not only from say mobile network operator, but also for say a new generation telematics unit which are coming up. See, a lot of research work is happening and OEM is seeing it in a very positive manner, not only from a regulation, but as I mentioned it from a safety, from improvement of say CO2 regulation, but also from a driver centricity where we are seeing that is a comfort, convenience, and a safety can be offered. It's a welcome from OEM side.
All right, thank you very much for setting the context on that one. As you clearly said, Yeah, it's not a new topic. It's been talked about for a fairly long time now. Secondly, of course, global ADAS cannot be plug and play here. So needs need for customization of the solutions, telematics personas that you spoke about, and how connectivity is moving all across to improving productivity, increasing safety, and things like that. So thanks for sharing that perspective. I think to get another OEM perspective on that, I request Mr. Mittal to you share about how Volvo Eicher has been doing the same across the truck range with many of the offerings that you have, and what's been your experience so far?
Good morning, everybody. From our perspective, how we see telematics and its features and its capabilities basically getting into the change management of the fleet operations. And second aspect that we see is how it can bring in the value to the organization internally by product improvements, product support improvements, and also even getting into a capability where we are looking at how we can provide real-time support for the customers at the place where their vehicle is. Detecting what the problem is at that time and enabling required support. We follow a concept called operationalization of telematics aspects. It's not only about using the data, doing some insights, and then just sitting on it. We are creating a process of delivery around it. That's very important. Second, as I started with the conversation or my explanation, is about change management in the fleet operations. So I talked about personas. Now, even in the fleet operations, there are multiple personas, from an owner to a fleet manager to a driver. Everybody has a different need. Identify that need, enable that need for them, and bring value to them. Third aspect is on the connectivity side. We are seeing a lot of challenges coming in the market because of this 2G network and all. There's a talk about 4G and 5G being talked about. These challenges need to be looked upon from an OEM perspective. How telecom providers can enable that. Without the right connectivity, our solutions can fail. We can have a best of the sensorized vehicles, digitalized vehicles, but without connectivity or the right connectivity solution, it will not. Third aspect is in terms of what process needs to be enabled for delivery. As I said, enable predictive uptime. As we follow that, we want to be the best uptime company in Europe, in India, and bring about the modernization in the CV industry, but bring about relevant modernization. And that can happen when we harness the value of this data, harness the value of this telematics connectivity, and bring that change in the ecosystem. That's how we perceive it.
Sure, thank you very much for that perspective, and especially for highlighting the change management aspect. I think that's probably been one of the reasons why more offtake has not happened. So there is that resistance to change, and probably with all that you said, that could change in the future. Finally, to also get the perspective from Ashok Leland on that, Mr. Sankar, if you could add.
So, many points has been repeated. One key point how we look at this is ADAS is seen as something as outside in the vehicle, and telematics is seen something as inside out of the vehicle. And connectivity is what connects entire things. Now, if you see even today, to be very honest, today the telematics, though we have been providing the vehicle, the penetration has been poor. Which means not just a poor, there is a renewal itself is also poor. There is a 1 year, 2 year subscription. Beyond that, fleet operators not renewing, which means that they're not seeing the value in it. So the focus going forward will be how to generate value to this in terms of they get something through revenue, insurance, safety, and all those steps. And at the same time, how much of data we can manage. As you rightly said, the connectivity is such an important step. While we can bring in edge computing and reduce the load onto the transfer of the data, but nevertheless, connectivity is an important step. Once if that's in place, and we believe that will be in place in short time. In that case, telematics will drive a lot of things from inside the vehicle, prognostics, diagnostics, and also the other features. And ADAS will come from the outside in terms of safety as well as the environment related, all the way from storms and all those steps is what I think will be the way forward.
Sure, understood. And as you said, how value realization, first value perception and then realization for the consumers happens would be a key, and clearly saying the power of the data, but at the same time that huge amount of data also needs to be managed. So thanks for sharing that perspective. Mr. Ramanathan, coming to you, Do you think in this whole gamut of offerings around ADAS, telematics, connectivity features, are there applications that could change the perception of how fleet operators feel, for example, about ADAS or about telematics or connectivity? Since you've had a lot of experience in many of these solutions going up, I'd like to know your perspective on this. Thank you. First of all, my thanks to CVF Forum for giving this opportunity. We work with all the OEMs on the connectivity solutions and the ADAS solutions. There are many use cases where the fleets, ultimately the fleets in commercial vehicle, while in the passenger car, the connectivity solution is a comfort feature. In the commercial vehicle, it's a safety as well as efficiency and total cost of ownership. So these are the values the fleets are looking at. So many of the fleets have started going above the value chain. Like for example, it started as a simple tracking device. Then now the OEMs have connected all the CAN features into the vehicle after the BS6. So you get all the vehicle information into that. Not only that, you can add some more sensors into it. Like you can add a new fuel sensor into it, or you can add a load sensor into it. And these throw important data to the fleets. Now, I will tell you some use cases from the fleets, like one of the global hazardous good carrier. They use telematics and ADAS feature, and they intelligently use this, and they achieved 2 million kilometers without any accidents. So, and they also use extensively these data to train their drivers. Like for example, we ourselves in our test track trained almost 500 drivers from that fleet, and all of them today are maintaining a zero accident record using this data intelligently. There are also one OEM in which they use this telematic data intelligently as a preventive or predictive maintenance tool. And in one of the discussions, they mentioned they prevented almost more than 500 engine failures, which could have occurred if the telematic data was not intelligently used. So they used the connectivity data to correctly intervene before the failure occurred. And there are many use cases like this. So we can go on talking like that. The users are endless, and together jointly with these different stakeholders, we are developing those use cases specifically for EV. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramanathan, on highlighting some of those use cases, especially as you said, TCO, zero accidents, and reducing the amount of engine failures. Certainly, that would be the sticky point for most operators. Moving on to you, Mr. Indrajit Sinha, and Mobileye's solutions on ADAS have been very well known, very popular, especially also on the passenger vehicle side. When we talk about commercial vehicles, and here in terms of the aftermarket fitment of ADAS features, do you think city buses there, which have to navigate through heterogeneity of traffic, pedestrians in our crowded roads, could be the starting point for ADAS to increase on the CV side? Your perspective on that, and also if you feel on the haulage side, trucking side also, if there are any places.
Good morning. Good afternoon, rather. So, talking about aftermarket side, right? I mean, Mobileye we acquired Mobileye probably in 2017. I think we have shipped probably over 100 million units globally. We have Mobileye in about 144 car models, and probably another 50 will come through next year. See, all that is happening in the passenger side, right? And we all know passenger vehicle, there is an aspirational line, right? CVs are different. I think all of us are here. CVs, the business logic is different. It is primarily not safety, even though it is politically incorrect to say that, but it is about the bottom line of the fleet operator, right? And safety for all practical purposes is darn difficult to sell, right? So given that as a perspective, I see that segments, and we all know it's not just bus operators, there is hazmat, industrial gases, where the compliance is very, very high, where ADAS and video telematics kind of system will be apt. Having said that, my sense is that it will not be just technology which will go and break open this segment, right? In India, for faster adoption, I think it is important that policy comes in place. That's when OEMs will kind of kickstart their design cycles and put the things on the ground, and that's when we get scale. So policy to me is important, and so is the legal aspect of ADAS. And I know globally right now, there are a lot of research and discussions around policy with regards to legal aspect in terms of who is blaming whom. India, there is no such policy today. But my sense is that not only policy from an ADAS perspective, but policy in terms of who is responsible for a particular action, that will also evolve as we mature as a market. But from an applicability perspective, I think it's pretty wide, right? I mean, you have 3Bs, you have bus fleet operators, hazardous material, industrial gases. I think practically all commercial vehicle fleet at some point or the other will need ADAS and video telematics on their systems. The question is, how do we get there, right? What kind of business model innovation we have to do? Technology we all have, right? Intel has, other partners on the ground will have it. They will refine also as we move forward. But the question is, how do we penetrate that segment where a fleet operator owning 10 buses will put the money on the table and say, get my system in, right? And to me, that is a challenge which we all are facing today. And I think there are ways to solve that. And India will also find its way to solve it. But legal aspect, finance aspect, policy aspects are other aspects of how to cross that barrier, right? I'm pretty sure about it. I'm very bullish about ADAS and video telematics. I'm just pointing to the fact that the challenges are real, and if you don't address those challenges, I think we will still be not at the tipping point.
Right, thank you, Mr. Sinha, for highlighting, yes, the ecosystem, so to say, in terms of policy, in terms of legal, has to, play ball for this to happen. So yeah, clearly that could act as a catalyst for greater adoption, and we'll come back to that a little later in the discussion also. Moving on to you, Mr. Animesh Sai. So here technologies has multiple solutions like creating maps for mines, then you have live sense for hazard tracking, plus you have analytics on the location data. So just taking one application of commercial vehicles, which is say the mining trucks. Right. Now mines are getting deeper, hence probably the need for all this is also increasing. Do you see increased traction coming in? And if not, then what could be the trigger points for this to happen in the Indian context?
See, from an Indian perspective, when we talk about the private mapping, that's basically falls into category of private mapping. And as you see, as the operation for mine becomes more complicated, it becomes very important for people to have a visibility of all the asset that is moving. As the mining becomes larger, bigger, and the kind of an asset that is moving around there, it's very important for them from a safety perspective and from a visibility perspective. So this is where there are solutions which we call as a private mapping. So people go down there, they map the entire and provide a private map. And definitely, and this becomes a very critical factor from a security perspective or from a safety perspective. Because accidents, the industrial accidents, are also something which is not much talked about in the newspaper. The newspaper, it is something which is very prevalent. And these are, they take lives. Right? So these are slowly becoming important. We are seeing traction in a lot of these, I would say, large companies and large people owning the gold mines, iron mines, talking to us on doing their mapping. Not only that, we are also seeing a use case coming out for large manufacturing, steel plants and all that. The environment is very similar. There are too many moving parts. How do you manage? That is managed only by doing what we call.
Understand. So yeah, so definitely private mapping needed for the mines, but maybe the adoption yet to increase to the extent that you would want it to.
Yes, from an adoption perspective, what happens is that right now, I'm talking purely from let's say, at a very high level perspective, the safety mechanism, we talk about the safety from a commercial perspective, as an is a topic which is a very debatable topic. We may say something, we do something. So maybe as and when this becomes as a paramount importance, we will see a lot of this kind of.
All right, sure, thank you. Moving on, and also to you, Mr. Kulkarni, and taking cues from what Mr. Indrajit Sinha also said on the role of regulation and legal aspects and all of that for the adoption to increase. Taking that a bit further, do you think regulations would also play a key role in sort of localization or development of locally relevant solutions as far as, say, ADAS is concerned? And where are we on that, if you talk of localization, both on the software and the hardware side today?
Okay, so if you allow me, I will slightly give a slightly longish answer.
Sure, most.
But I will start with slight disagreement with his views about the safety aspect. And as I mentioned in my previous thought, that the topic is not new, but the view is totally different now. And the view is coming from a safety perspective as OEMs are concerned. OEMs are looking that as the telematics, the connectivity, also more important from safety perspective. Safety for, say, safety of the vehicle, safety of the user, and then connectivity is not only from a revenue, but which are so relevant in today's context. So I just wanted to clarify that OEMs are focusing on the safety more. Now coming back to your question, when we are talking about that, and I will try to answer this question in the 3 parts. And that's why I requested for slightly longish answer. So 3 parts are like, when you say about like what are the features we are offering? Features like a perception, features of a safety, features of a say cruising, features of say parking. When we talk about the second part, which is we call it like what are the ingredients? Ingredients like we are saying it's processors, sensors, and software. These are the another bucket. And the third bucket is like you have a various sub-segment within Indian commercial vehicle. So when we see from this perspective, the regulatory say framework plays a very, very important role. And I must thank that in the today's world, not only from say OEM perspective, but also from a government perspective, a lot of importance is given. A lot of importance is given to passive safety, a lot of importance is given to active safety, and that is enabling the OEMs to work upon this technology, to spend a lot of effort, money on this technology. Your part is likely saying that how are we geared up and are we focusing on the localization, what is the regulatory framework around it. One is about the regulatory framework as far as the ADAS is concerned, whether the level 0 autonomy, level 1 autonomy, level 2, and then for India it is level 3, level 4 is far away at this point of time. But for the level 0, level 1, level 2 kind of thing, the framework is coming in place. Many OEMs along with the some of the system integrators, some of the technology providers are actively pursuing for the framing these regulations for India specific use cases. And because you have a small commercial segment which is like a very price sensitive. You have a light commercial vehicle which is like an intra-city, intercity. You have a buses which again is intercity, intra-city. And then you have various applications. Trucks then have trucks, tipper, tractor trailers. The solution part which is for the processors, the solution part for the software or for the sensors are slightly different. Like you will go only with a vision-based technology for say small commercial areas, but you would definitely go for the radars and lidar for the heavy commercial area. The component level regulations exist, and then the adaptation part for India-specific G levels, India-specific environment, India-specific say market applications are getting updated. And I'm saying that there is a strong push from the government of India also, which we are also actively participating and we are pushing for that. The only challenging part is that these sensors are not locally made available. So the localization part, the accuracy part, you were also mentioning about that, are playing very important role for India, and there I think the OEMs are working with the same in case of the world or the centers of the world, and here also, where I think the adaptability for Indian market, for India, it is coming out very prominently, and that is why the support is required from the other ecosystem part. But regulations, I think, is progressing fast, progressing very well on this side.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much for giving a very vivid picture of how this is happening, and also clarifying on the safety aspect that your focus remains safety and the other things added on to that, right? So sticking on sort of a similar theme on what needs to be done in India, I'll go across to you, Mr. Gopishankar. So the data transfer, storage, processing is expected to increase manifold when all of this happens. So do you think that is also creating space for, say, new players to come in, and how geared up are we as the automotive ecosystem for it right now?
Yeah, see, that is going to be another big challenge. Means I'll change this answer into 3 areas. One, what change we have to do on the vehicle as OEMs. And second, what's the data we'll be collecting. And third is the data processing. We'll take these 3 options. So first, if we take the change, this OEM having kept on improving the safety of the vehicle, we have put 100 devices, safety devices, seatbelt. And now to install with all the sensors, the electric architecture, all needs to be updated significantly. And that will now collect a lot of data into the system. So the data is going to come across the aggregates, both from inside, as well as from outside through cameras, as well as through different sensors, ADAS and all those stuff. So this entire data, we expect it to be at least in the terabytes, the region of terabytes. So this data, since your question is how to handle the data, is going to be a big challenge how we handle it. One option people are talking about is the edge computing. You do a lot of processing within the vehicle and send the processed data outside. That's one option we looked at. But more importantly, the connectivity will play a big role here. What we're saying about the 2G and 4G, that will determine what is the packets of data we can send across, what is the cloud structure we should have, and what's the processing we need to do it so that we give back. So here the data will be of 2 types. One, which we can give feedback as well as speed. For example, the prognostics or diagnostics, you say the oil levels, or you say even you can go to the extent of the stress at different parts, and then alert the drivers of a possible failure going to come up. So one set of data. The other set of data will be life-saving. There you need to act fast. You need to go to tell the driver you're going to meet with an accident, you're going to hit into some kind of an event. In that case, the data transfer, the editing the data, sending the right data on time, and then relaying back to the driver needs to be a very big challenge. It will be considering the connectivity and those things. So that will be a challenge, and we need to work on it. I'm sure there are enough technology to capture, process, but I'm really worried about the connectivity across the field, particularly commercial vehicles which are going to off-highway. So there, already we have little map data actually, and there this data also will become very critical. Now this is an area again, the data which is being collected from the commercial vehicles can also be used in terms of the mind mapping and all. But I think that will be the challenge in the off-highway.
All right, thank you for sharing that, what's the challenge there from the vehicle side. I think just sticking on that same question, I would like to ask you also, Mr. Sinha, so from the larger ecosystem side, say once we moved out of the vehicle, what is it that's happening here? And then Mr. Animesh, you could also add your thoughts to it after Mr. Sinha.
Sure. Before that, I think I'll just clarify to Anirudh. See, when I said safety is a hard sell, my notion was to sell to the end customer, the end fleet operators, right? Because for him, it's a cost of doing business, right? And as long as he's not profitable, selling a safety solution would be a very darn hard thing, which we have all seen. So
I-
not on the OEMs.
No, reason also because of scarcity of life.
Correct.
Safety has given a top.
Correct.
Even the
So if we can modify safety pitch into how we improve his operational efficiency, that's the goal for the industry. Coming to the question which is on
Large amounts of data that's coming in and probably petabytes of data coming, how do you handle it?
yeah, so see, there also data is for a couple of purposes. Right? One is you use data, and I think Shiv in the Netherlands presentation talked about several petabytes of data that they're collecting. See, data is used for training, right? So the more data you have, the better you can be on your algorithms, right? So you train your data set, and then you infer from that data set. So it's very important to capture data, variety of data. A classic example, we have had situations in India where a truck with 2 bamboo poles shooting out, right? Mobileye, based out of Israel, couldn't figure out what the heck it is, right? And then we have to capture that data and then work on it to kind of finally say a two-wheeler or an auto will have 2 lights behind. Sometimes there could be 1 light also, right? Sometimes a truck can have 4 poles sticking out. Now these are all new objects for classification, right? And that's a huge, huge challenge. It's a more severe challenge in the aftermarket side than in the OEM side, because in OEM you can feed the data back onto your systems, right? But in the aftermarket side, it's very difficult because you're not downloading all that algorithm back onto your systems, right? You have what you have. So in an Indian context where there is a lot of unstructured driving and road conditions are even more chaotic, how much data you have to capture to train your algorithms itself is a challenge. So I think it's needless to say, data is very important from training and inference. Now, coming to the part of after you have trained and inferred, what actions you take, how much data you put on your edge, how much you move to the cloud. I think with the advent of 5G and the prices coming down, even there also we need to work carefully in terms of how we use the data, what is relevant, what is event-based data, and what is data which is not useful for us, right? Which kind of boils down to how efficiently you're designing your system at the edge of the cloud, right? Because you don't want all the data to go back to your cloud and just block the whole system. So data has different meanings from inference, training, and then what you take actions on. And I think it's very important from the CV OEM's perspective for grounds-up design of ADAS that training data is super critical for efficient system. If we don't do that, what will happen is a system which has several high false positives, right? So essentially the driver will freak out because there will be constant beeps. And that brings me to a last point, which I want to just clarify. Because of lack of regulation in the industry, since there is no regulation, there is no control on systems performance. So that kind of lowers the degradation of what you bring into the country for efficient ADAS alerting systems, right? Because someone can have a 90% false positive, and some system can have 98% false positive. And that has a very direct effect on adoption. Because with an 85% false positives, then you would have a driver who is saying, hey, this thing beeps too many times or gives me too many alerts, and I don't trust it, right? Then it becomes a trust issue. So I think it's important from that perspective also that regulation brings in a certain standard where solution providers are benchmarked in terms of false positives, false negatives, apart from data handling aspect, which involves privacy data, where you're storing your data in the cloud, is it in my hosted server in India or outside, etc. So it's a very complicated subject, but I think it's a very important one for all of us to kind of delve into, for solution providers especially.
Right, yeah, and I think the enabling regulation part that you said, yeah, probably that's very important. We've seen in many other aspects also, several other powertrains also, where there is no enabling regulation, probably, the most standardized or the most right quality stuff is not coming out. So.
And like I said, there's a cost of technology, right? The best in class would come with cost, right? And then that's the beneficial side.
Right, understood. Mr. Sai, you want to add something?
Let me bring a very different aspect of data. You spoke about one aspect of it. See, today, first of all, I'll just talk about the connectivity, and then I'll talk about data in general. See, when you talk about the connectivity, now in India, all of us, we know that there is a big amount of 4G and 5G is coming in. So, with 4G, just two statistics. 4G goes up to about 20 Mbps, and the latency is about 50 milliseconds. So, all these applications that we're talking about, the ADAS application, level 5, which is not there in India, and I don't see it happening in probably next few years. But when it comes to, one of the biggest factor would be the amount of data that we talked about it, and the latency, how fast you are able to respond to it. So this is where 5G will come into picture, the connectivity of infrastructure part outside the vehicle will come into picture. Because with 5G comes in from a 50 millisecond latency, the application latency will go down to 1 millisecond. So that's when you have to have the quick response. So for example, there's a collision detection, right? If you're talking about level 4 ADAS, level 4 or level 5, if it's a driverless, it has to take a split second decision. And for that, the data has to come out of your vehicle, go down, do the processing, part processing being done in your car itself using the ECUs and all which is there, or SOCs which is there in your car. But that split second decision has to be taken, right? So this is where I would say the connectivity part would become very important. The second aspect, which I think you touched upon, the monetization part. Earlier we talked about how do we monetize the data. Such a huge amount of data that is coming. See, there are ways and means of monetizing this data. What we are forgetting is that the data, like for example, the potholes, braking system, the weather conditions, the curvature, a lot of these factors, this data that is actually getting collected out of your fleet can then be stored and put across the marketplace. There are today marketplaces available for commercial vehicle data, which can be used for analysis perspective, for design, a lot of factors, and there is a marketplace available. We are one of the person who has a marketplace for this kind of data available. So it can be monitored. Apart from that, people are talking about what we call UBI, right? Usage-based insurance. Usage-based insurance, these data become very important, and this is very, very important use case from the insurance perspective. So all this data is going to play a very important role in creating a new source of revenue for both the truck owner as well as for the
Sure, thank you. Thank you for touching upon the monetization part, especially at the end of it. And that question I would just like to take slightly differently to you, Mr. Mittal. So one is, yes, you monetize the data, and that could be used for a variety of reasons. For example, infrastructure creation, things like that Mr. Sai just spoke about. But other than that, do you also think that when we are trying to say give more value to the consumer, say in terms of performance improvement, safety improvement, insurance cost reduction, things like that, the OEM also needs to create like an economic case around it. So, say in the form of subscription services or some things that the fleet owners want to take up. And we know that some of these models are there, but then still the adoption or the propensity or the willingness to pay for it stays low. So your take on that, and what is it that could really help trigger this thing off?
So my take on that is instead of looking at the monetization of the data or the whatever information is coming out, look at the value creation for your own purpose and for the customer. The subscription cost of a telematics is hardly anything. Still, we see a challenge in getting that renewals or the cost coming out from the customer. That means instead of looking at the cost, look at the value creation for its operation. Why a customer takes up a telematics, even though it is not an OEM fitted, still it will take up a third-party provider and run its vehicle for track and trace. That means he has the need for getting that device for its operations. So look into that need and enable them. Hazardous good transfers requires compliance. For example, large petrochemical company, whenever their products are supplied or transferred from one place to another, they want certain connectivity, information and all. It is done through those devices. That means the customer is required to bound by that contract. AIS 40 by a government makes it compliance. Then you need to have the device which provides that information to a government service. AIS 145 is coming up for reverse parking, means it's connectivity, this information is required. 184 is on the way, the driver state monitoring maybe next July, it's going to come out. So that means there is a need available in the market. We just need to look into that need and look at the aspect of value creation. From an OEM perspective, we see a lot of potential in this information. For improving our, as I said, our product quality, product support, our process in the market, our channel partner process improvement, driver training, driver education, even going to the extent of enabling fleet operators and fleet owners about their service quality and how to reduce their operation cost. This is about the large fleet and medium fleet operators. But there is a large persona available in the market, which is a single fleet owner. What is the value he will see from the telematics? He's the owner cum driver. He's sitting on the truck, he knows what the truck is doing. Then why he needs a telematics device for? That means for him the need will be, if he looks into the compliance. The contract for which it is running for, that aspect has to come into it. Why a driver information is needed? What value to bring in? Look into those aspects. We see customers or the fleet owners demand a simple service called fuel theft. That means they see that this is the value. 65% of the customer operations are by fuel. If we are able to bring that value for him in that operation cost reduction, he will definitely pay for it. We see a lot of value in our uptime service enabling how to identify a problem in the vehicle, then enabling the right service for the customer, and also take back and look at the product quality improvement. So there's a lot of value coming in. So my take is, instead of looking at the monetization only as the goal, look at the value creation. And things will automatically fall into place.
Sure, thank you, especially for highlighting how, given the spectrum of owners in our CV industry, how it's important to probably value creation, or say looking at their economic equation and selling the solution to them, so that the propensity to take up these things increases. Sticking on the same theme and coming to you, Mr. Ramanathan, we know that ZF Wapco has had this solution for trailers. And it enables many things, including, say, the ADAS features on a trailer, so accidents like rollover, etc., damage to cargo reduces. It also helps in track and trace. It could actually be the real enabler for multiple carts to the same horse and things like that. But in India, we see that that AIS 113, which is there for trailers, anyway, the compliance of that itself is quite low, and hence the ability to use some of the products that you were saying also stays low. But if you look at it at an overall aspect, that means you're not using your horse enough because of this, and that is leading to suboptimal operations. So what has been your sort of experience in this field? Because here we also have some large fleet operators also who are using tractor trailers. So your perspective on that?
Yeah. I just want to put it in perspective. Like, India is traditionally not a tractor-trailer country, because in Europe or China, we see tractor-trailer combination will constitute almost 40% of the medium and heavy commercial vehicle, while India, the number somewhere stays at 8% or something. The reason for that are multiple fold, because the tractor-trailer combination, the flexibility offered by a tractor-trailer, you leave one trailer and take the prime mover and take another trailer, that is not being experienced by many of the fleet operators. So the first and foremost was basically the trailers were not allowed to register independently in India. That has changed. 2 years back, the government has allowed trailers to independently register. So that now some of the innovative fleet operators who are first adopters, the early adopters of technology, they have started independently registering the trailers. The second one is, as you rightly touched upon, the AS 113, which talks about the trailer ABS mandatory. Today, even after 5 years of the regulation, the adoption rate is only 30%. So, but on the other side, a positive side, if I see, the next generation of technology next to the trailer ABS is the electronic braking system. We call it as an intelligent trailer program, which combines almost 46 features. And this adoption has started increasing with the early adopters of technology. So there are, today as we speak, almost 7 to 8% of the fleets have adopted this trailer ABS system
voluntarily, even though it is not mandated, because of the benefits offered by the system. What are the benefits the fleets are getting? One is trailer ABS gives them an insights into how how the driver is safely driving the vehicle. And second, it also gives him an accurate data on how much load he is carrying. So whether the fleet is running with full load or partial load or empty. So it also enables the fleets to improve their revenue. Then the third one is that it also gives him a lot of maintenance tips. So many of the fleets, like as I told before, they are using it, like for example, we partner with a leading telematic company in China, in globally. Who has almost 5 lakh vehicles, tractor trailer combination, and we give them a dedicated trailer telematic solution. They use them, like for example, if I have a fleet of 10,000 vehicles, there may be some 15 drivers who are driving dangerously. How do I identify through this data that 15 driver and train them focusly? And the second use case is these 10,000 vehicles are going around the country. They may be going through different routes and different unsafe situations and all. So wherever this unsafe situation is there, then the stability control or trailer EBS system gives a warning. So you geomark these situations. So the next driver from that fleet who goes through that route, he gets a warning. So he avoids the accident. So like that, there are innovative use cases which are being developed in India also. As I told, some of the hazardous goods carriers are using, and when I visited one of the Delhi-based fleet, he uses 1,500 vehicles, and on an average, 1.8% of his fleets are down with accidents. So these accidents are varying levels. So whenever there is an accident, the vehicle is down for 2 days to 1.5 months. Even it takes 1.5 months or 2 months to recover the vehicle. So he uses the ADAS and connectivity solution together intelligently to reduce the accidents. So today he has considerably reduced the number of accidents. So these are all some of the use cases which gives benefit.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Ramanathan. And I think you also sort of adding to the point that Mr. Sinha was saying. So it's safety plus it's also value that is deriving, by reducing those accidents. That's why the offtake is increasing. So finally, just as a summary, I request each of you to just say what you see as the outlook for connectivity, telematics, and ADAS, and what do you think would be one or two most important things needed to be able to make this really catalyze in terms of adoption in the country. If you could just have a quick word, starting with you, Mr. Sinha, and then across the table.
Okay, so from Intel perspective and my own view, I think we are at an inflection point finally. We have been talking that we are at an inflection point for several years. My sense is that if I am to categorize Telematics 2.0 was GPS, track and trace, hard acceleration, whatnot. I think we are entering the next version, which is about video, right? That is, when you meet with an accident or when you meet an alert, what happened? Right? Show me the snippet. What happened 30 seconds before, what happened 4 seconds after, what my driver is doing, what is on the road, all of that. So I think video with 5G should be the propelling trend that we will see in the next couple of years, globally as well as in India. I don't think India will be doing any catch-up in this case. Sometimes in India we jump generations, right? So I see India jumping generations from pure play GPS track and trace to video telematics. And I think CVs definitely is in the right in the middle to take and leverage that technology.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Mittal.
So my take is, yes, we are in, I'll say, the early starter now. We are in the starting phase. I divide this into 4 quarters. We are in the beginning quarter of it. We have to move from where the vehicle is, what it is doing, to what it can do, what it can help in my operation, how it can help in my operation. So moving from a simple pure play data, a sender device or a data device to what insights it can bring into to my operations, to our product quality, product design, even into the process improvement. In the last mile delivery that our channel partners, dealers, the workshop, how they can be equipped better using this. That is what we should be looking at. Aspect of, I think I heard somebody saying that driver scarcity in the city world. So we need to look at better drivers. And better drivers can come with them, able to impart their insights to them. And then create an ecosystem of those drivers which can be used. Apart from it, a couple of things that has to be upon is definitely on the network side, which we have talked about. Other aspect that we do is the standardization across the telematics and across values. That is becoming one of the major bottlenecks. When we look into, from a customer perspective, we see he has multi-fleet. He can't do that analysis for each and every place independently. That has to be done. So those standardization has to come in, needs to be augmented by the compliance which government is trying to push forward. And I'm sure those will make a lot of difference. As the compliance kicks in, a lot of adoption may come in. So instead of looking at the, I'll say, a money part, you look into the compliance and the values.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Sai.
Yeah, so from my perspective, if you look at this entire journey, right, I would divide this into three different pillars. One, what I call as infotainment. Second is what the telematics. And the third is what I call as infrastructure. Now, infotainment and telematics, we talked a lot about it. Infrastructure is where what we call as a V2X, which is vehicle to everywhere. It's a protocol that we're talking about. So I think over a period of time, probably difficult for me to say, maybe a year and a half, we'll see a lot of focus on the third pillar, where there will be a lot of focus towards vehicle to probably V2N, vehicle to network, vehicle to infrastructure, where infrastructure will be a smart lighting system, or V2P, V2V, vehicle to vehicle. So we're going to see a lot of focus on that aspect, and there will be multiple other use cases that will come out of it. But I think that's where the industry, according to me, is.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Sai. Mr. Singh.
Yeah, I agree that we are at the start of a kind of a ADAS revolution across the commercial vehicle. But the most important thing is customers, whether it's a single owner or a fleet operator, are ready to work with data. If they are asking us, how can you provide data which is useful to them, frankly. And it is now up to our OEMs and solution providers to come with innovative solutions, for them to easily use and get better efficiency, be it in safety or in performance at all. In addition to this, I also expect a lot of new apps coming up. There may be a requirement of you opening up some of the data, and some neutral third-party apps may also be come up. That's what I expect in the near future.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Cleveland.
Okay. So, my thought process is, to be honest, I'm very, very positive about all the three words which we are discussing about the ADAS, connectivity, and the telematics part of that. And that I'm just qualifying my statement, why I'm saying that it's very positive, is that I'm seeing that this is a good time, if not the best, to put our R&D efforts or our say effort in the infrastructure. All the three words which we are discussing, or three technology we are discussing about ADAS, telematics, and everything. It has to be India-specific solution. It has to be local solution, and then a lot of engineering work has to go for capturing the various use cases and say various sub-segments which are present in the India segment. And there the many players are coming together. They are spending their the R&D efforts on it. And if I can tell you one of the say paper which I read, that the $330 billion in the investment which is happening in the CES area. Out of that, 1/3 of that is spent on the ADAS side. And when we see that the telematics and the connectivity is also supporting the ADAS journey, there are a lot of R&D work which is happening with the Indian OEMs on this. So this, I think we have to work upon that. The three words which is called as the sense, think and act, which are so important in today's context. The sense part is important, from the localization perspective and technology perspective, technology has to be India specific. The think part, where we are seeing the data handling and everything, where the gone are the path, like we are discussing with the data in the terabyte, already in the petabytes, and then the connectivity and telematics, that data is going on. So the handling of the data, the latency which we just now discussed, and as a development of the sensors and the processors is becoming. The algorithm part, I think the Indian brain will definitely act upon that, and I'm very hopeful about all these things.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kulkarni. Finally, Mr. Ramanathan, your words. Yeah, I think many of the points are already covered. I would say 2 points. One is the convergence of ADAS and connectivity technology. The full blown usage will happen in the next 3-4 years. Like today, ADAS is still not a mandate, while connectivity is a mandate in India. So in next 2-3 years, India will go for a mandate on ADAS. Then every vehicle will be fitted with both ADAS and connectivity solution. So there are tremendous possibilities on the convergence of these two technologies and to give a useful insights to the customers, fleet customers. The second one is the future is also orchestration of fleet. So, like imagine I have a small fleet of 50 vehicles, and I have my own Uber type of order app or solution. So where I know these are all the customers I have to serve, and these are all the vehicles, and I orchestrate them seamlessly. That is also a technology today available, and some of the fleets are already adapting it. The third one is, like Indranil pointed out on the video telematics. Globally, there is also a program called the Road Experience Management. So today, when you open the Google app, you see the live view of the traffic, like it shows red when there is a traffic or something. So when the video telematics goes to a next level and everybody adapts that, then you see a live view of the street you are talking about. It requires a lot of localization of the data and other things. So as you travel through the road, you also get the video of the road and other things. So that is called the road experience management. So these are all the 3 trends I am seeing in the future. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Ramanathan. I think with that, we'll just go across to the audience for any questions that you may have. Please identify yourself and also mention whom your question is directed to.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Anchal from Bosch. So, we have heard a lot of good insights on the ADAS and connectivity. So, I would say either we wear a hat of an OEM or some technocrat or a fleet owner. So, we all are facilitated in this journey of ADAS, right? What is the take of you guys on the main actor of this ADAS, who is driver? I mean, how about his adoption of it, and what awareness program are there, or what have you thought through the strategies when they adopt it? Because it's made about their acceptance, then only this safety program can work for all of us. And one more point I would like to add on here is regarding, we all are doing great in terms of developing this technology, right? Developing so many use cases which can bring safety to this transportation and this connected ecosystem altogether. So how about we all come together and bring our ideas and converge and bring something which is exactly contributing to the SDGs in which we are living, right? SDG 3 and 7 is what I would like to touch upon, which talks about well-being and health, and then the energy consumption. It revolves around the economic consumption and everything. So I have put up a big question, and we would like to know the views of you guys on that.
Any one of you would like to? Yes.
To your first question regarding how we are, making the drivers adopt ADAS. I think I understand the question correctly. There are many areas is coming up. Drivers also are very concerned about their safety. They're going on a very long drive in a commercial vehicles. I think the first few things is the training portion, which we also explained. In the training, even Etterlin also explained that the videos are shown back to the drivers, and they explain how they are driving the vehicle. So this is in the driver institutes. This will come up as a way of improving their driving. and they end up getting the points, which will help them maybe get some remuneration in terms of the points they get. This is one way of driver motivation. Another major motivation will be on a safety level. Like there are even in our own one of our testing vehicles, we found that the drivers were saved based on the ADAS, and then they get motivated, and then word of mouth goes into one. So one key point is safety is there in everybody's mind, and most of the vehicles are fully forward vehicles. If you go by the kind of a vehicle we have, the safety comes into their mind, and they are always, they are very conscious about it. And if you give a features which provides that safety, they are very much into it. That's the. But a second question of an overall joint, I think that's a big question. We'll not be able to answer directly, but yeah, through SIAM and all, this is happening. There are multiple meetings happening between the OEMs, between the technology partners, and this is happening in a. But we don't have like a European kind of association. That is, yeah, it will come up.
No, was just wanted to bring this to point of everyone present here, because through Bosch we're just trying to put this noble cause, I would say, ahead of efficiency and excellency in India, or at least the world going ahead. So maybe if it clicks any one of you, I would like to discuss further later. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, I will take the one question. I am Mahendra from Tata Motors. Thanks, good afternoon, eminent panels. As we know that this ADAS is already implements giving on the some of the car on the Indian roads, and now our OEMs are trying to take on the or implement on our CV business of the CV vehicles, but still this regulation is not on the place, because we feel that the regulations are the guiding poles for the anything for functionalities, how it will go ahead. So how do you feel that as a what is your views about the regulation is not there, and I don't know after some doing the work we are progressing ahead, and some regulation, some functionalities came afterwards. So what is your views on that? Still this regulation is not at place, and what do you feel as a panel? What do you do for the regulation to become faster, please?
Any one of you can give us one. Actually, in India, I will tell our experience. Many such cases where regulation came, the fleets started using in bits and pieces somewhere here and there, and they started getting the benefits. Then the government also saw the benefit and then made it as a mandate. So, like for example, in the case of ABS regulation itself, before the ABS regulation, we worked with the different fleets, and there were almost 50,000 vehicles we fitted in the aftermarket, and then it all gave the benefit, and different stakeholders they gave their positive feedback. Then it became a regulation. So likewise, in ADAS also, there are many players who are doing in aftermarket. Only bit of caution is when it comes to like some of the panel speakers also spoke about it. Some kind of structure should be put because where players like ZF, we are very clear that when you integrate braking with the ADAS sensors, then it has to be validated by the OEM and released. Then only we will launch it in the aftermarket. But like for example, some of the OEMs have a very stringent standard. Like for example, in the ADAS, more than a positive, it should not give you a false alarm. Like some of the OEMs, even in Europe, they have like 1 million kilometers, you cannot have 2 incidents of false braking. So that is this kind of standard. But, so warning system, many of the fleets are voluntarily adapting, and that has actually enabled the government to even declare it as a draft standard is already there for the forward collision warning. Ultimately, these are all also helping the government to, the stakeholders to decide on the regulation.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ramanathan. So I think with that, we've come to the end of the panel discussion. I think there's been a wealth of knowledge that I think everyone's got from the stalwarts of the industry today. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for patiently answering all the questions, and to you all also for being a lovely audience. Thank you very much.
We would like to thank all our panelists for presenting such an informative session on ADAS as well as connectivity spaces. Can we put our hands together for all the panelists present today? On that note, networking is the key to attend events such as CVF. Enjoy your networking lunch and make sure you exchange at least 2 business cards. Enjoy your lunch and I'll see you back in the hall by 2:25. Thank you so much. Enjoy your lunch.